Welcome back to Throwing It Down with Mitty D. I got the Hershey shirt on. Last time I had the Reese's shirt on, talking about the Houston Texans. Today, we're going to be asking the question, who are the Tennessee Titans? You know what? I'm going to tell you exactly who they are. The Tennessee Titans, we'll talk about them last year first. Last year, number one team in the AFC. Their defense was the major reason they got into the playoffs and maintained the number one seed throughout the last couple weeks of the season. They had the sixth best scoring defense, and most of that was attributed to their yards per rush defense, which was fourth, and that kind of forced offenses into a box, as well as the fact that their offense generally scored faster and more points than the opponents, and they beat good teams like the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Rams, the Saints. And I want to kind of take a look at the Saints game more in depth, because that game was super ugly by the Titans offense, but they had a couple major defensive red zone stops, and that attributes to having a low scoring defense in general. Their offense didn't overperform by any metrics. Derrick Henry got hurt. Ryan Tannehill was hurt throughout the year. A.J. Brown, Julio Jones. Their offense was annihilated, and they still found ways to win games. I said something a couple episodes back about the Titans receiving core and how I believe it's actually better this year than last year. And the injuries were definitely part of the concern, but the awful play and disappointing, signing of Julio Jones was the major reason why I thought last year was a failure. You had to rely on receivers like Westbrook-Ikhine, who was a rookie. Now he's a second year. He has the veterans like Julio Jones and A.J. Brown to coach him up last year, and now he has Robert Woods to teach him some route running techniques. Julio definitely taught him some stuff because he definitely wasn't playing. And the Titans last year was terrible. Their defense kept them together. Their metrics show really well, but I believe they had an even greater output because of the strain their tattered offense put on the defense. And Ryan Tannehill overperformed based on what people were saying, how he played last year. Last year, he struggled behind an offensive line who did not block well. Don't have any stats about them, but they didn't block well, and they ended up letting a lot of pressure on Ryan Tannehill, causing him into some really bad mistakes. And even though they caused him that distress, he still stuck it out. He played the Titans' way. They ran the ball well. They just played solid altogether. They made as little mistakes as possible, even with the injuries that plagued the team. So let's look actually at their schedule last year. They started off really tough against the Cardinals, losing to them and the Jets, although they beat the Colts and the Seahawks, both close games. Then they ended up beating, like I said, the Rams, the Bills, the Saints. And they will lose these weird games like against the Texans and the Jets and the Steelers, who that game was super ugly. Nobody wanted to win that game. Looking at the Titans' upcoming schedule for the 2022 NFL season, they play the NFC East and the AFC West, just like all of their other teams in their division. And just based off of how they revamped their receiving core, how Derrick Henry's coming back healthy, Ryan Tannehill has pressure on him from the coaching staff, from another quarterback they drafted. He is going to be the one that propels this team forward. Derrick Henry is always solid. I personally think he's an overrated running back just because his efficiency, it isn't even that good. I'll find an example. So the Tennessee Titans, they averaged 4.4 yards per attempt last season. And guess what? Derrick Henry only averaged 4.3 yards per attempt. Yeah, he's going to break off a couple big runs per game, but those short runs that they run him through the middle where he doesn't break, where he doesn't have good blocking because he struggles at breaking tackles, that's where they're going to need younger running backs to come in and really pound the defense, where Derrick Henry can then exploit later in the game because he seems to have really good endurance. And I like how the announcers talk about that, but his beginning of game film is never up to how they speak of him. They speak so highly of how he runs and how methodical he is. And it's really annoying because you'll see him get like tackled in the backfield 15 times a game, and then he has 2 runs for 50 plus yards, and then the rest of his runs are like 4 to 2. I could go on and on. Looking at their 2022 schedule, they have a lot of tough games. Their first place games are against the Packers, the Bengals, and the Bills. They luckily have a good division that they play against, and they play the NFC East, so they should get some, easier games against those teams just because the AFC West is so tough. This division game against the Texans before the Titans play the Chiefs in that rematch where the Titans embarrass the Chiefs in front of everybody, that game, you have to watch for these look-ahead games, especially for the Titans and the Colts playing against the AFC West, because those are games that those teams know that they have to win 1 or 2 to win the division, because they're going to beat the teams that they're supposed to beat, and it's just going to be a uphill battle for these teams. The Titans seem to be struggling, losing A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. Although they get Robert Woods, they also drafted that wide receiver, Trayvon Burks, in the first round, which was very surprising. Didn't think that would happen. I think they have a real chance to mimic how they played last year, if not be better. Neil Westbrook-Ikhine is going to be better. They got a couple lower tier wide receivers that are really good. Their defense is all coming back. They re-signed a linebacker. They have a great core to their defense that is going to protect them and only improve going into this next season. I'm so high on the Titans defense. They played so well last year. The one thing they could maybe work on is getting more turnovers. They were only 14th in the NFL in turnovers, while their offense really struggled with turnovers. So if their defense just... And turnovers happen, very willy-nilly, but these teams that are going to be throwing a lot have a lot of turnover opportunity, like the Raiders, the Chiefs, maybe the Packers, we don't know. Probably the Cowboys, the Jaguars. There's a lot of opportunity, especially for undeveloped talent like Davis Mills and Trevor Lawrence and Jalen Hurts, and quarterback who has very little receivers like Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes a little bit. I like their options, but we can talk about them later as well. Don't really have a perfect record that I would see the Titans having. I can see them winning, 2 or 3 games against the NFC East, 1 game against the AFC West, probably 2 actually, just because I think their coaching is much better than the Raiders, much better than the Broncos, much better than the Chargers, and winning a lot of those divisional games and playing really tough teams out of their division just doesn't add up for a great season. There's a lot of really good teams in the NFL, and I'm really hoping to see the Titans succeed because I do like their team. I want to see Ryan Tannehill provide these fun games because he can do that, and I think the game against the Bengals really left a sour taste in everybody's mouth, as well as the media's reliance on talking about Derrick Henry the whole game. It's just really annoying to see how they disrespect Ryan Tannehill. I'm going to give the Titans an 8-9 record. just because of their super tough schedule. They have a couple of players that are just beginning. They have so many rookies on the team. Half of their offensive line, if either of their guards go out, they have rookies backing them up. Half of their defensive linemen, rookies. Places where they have in-depth talent of, people who have played the game a while, have experience, are the defensive back position and safeties. Everywhere else, they have rookies as backups. Running back, they lost Nick Nichols. They drafted a rookie, Haskins from Michigan, which I'm really excited about because I think he's an underrated running back, and I don't know where they got him in the draft because we only care about the first round anyways, but he's really important. They still have Dontrell Hilliard. They have weapons. It's really going to be about the scheme and how the defense plays. If they continue to do well, they'll outperform the 8-9 record. I guarantee it, because they had bad turnover luck compared to how their defense was playing, and overall, great team. They're very consistent with how they play. I see them only starting their journey, honestly. Thank you for watching. Now you know who the Tennessee Titans will be in 2022. Come back this week for my talk about the final team in the AFC South, the Indianapolis Colts. Peace.